Okay, this is part 2. This is reassembly of the ribbon cable on a Phantom 3 Standard. We're going to change the roll arm and the yaw arm in this one. I thought the roll arm was good at first on this one, but the little tab there for the camera stop, that's broken off on this one. So to get these motors out of here, you have to cut this strap. So I have a Dremel with a rotary cutter on it, just a little end mill, and so I cut that away. I didn't do it on the video here because I had my layout all done and I don't want to throw metal filings all over my thing here, but cut a little notch there, you can see, and then I just take the flathead screwdriver, stick it in there and twist, and it pops the glue loose, and then you can pull the roll motor out of there. Alright, that's junk. This one's one we're keeping. I'm a little bit worried about this roll motor because the ribbon's stressed, but we'll give it a shot anyway. So we want to put it in our new arm. The new arms that I sell an alignment, or provide an alignment tool with them. The alignment tool keeps the flat on the shaft lined up. That side needs to be pointed in the correct direction because it runs that pot. And if that flat isn't towards the top of the gimbal, it's going to try to put it there. So if you have that flipped over upside down, it's going to think the camera's upside down and it's going to try to flip it. And it'll do some crazy stuff while it's doing that. So anyway, put that in there. That's all lined up. Then I got some acetone here. Fingernail polish remover will work as well. And I'm just going to wet the inside of this ring. The acetone dissolves ABS. So I'm just rolling the bead around to get it evenly coated right now. But when the acetone dissolves the ABS, it becomes like a glue. It bonds it better than glue would. When it dries, it goes back to the same state. It doesn't go through a chemical change or anything, so it's perfect. Anyway, we slide this on, and you slide it almost flush, but not quite. That seems to be about the sweet spot. Because you never know if your back cover's bent. I suppose that these are the standards, so they have an aluminum cover. The pros have a metal, or these have a plastic cover. The pros have an aluminum cover. But when that cover is bent, it flexes this here, and then it can throw stuff off. So I don't know, to cut down on sanding later, I like to do that. So we do that first, so that sits. It'll all be lined up and perfect when we're done. We move on to this here. So we want to make sure that this tab is flipped up when we put this back together. That's where you can put your ribbon in after everything's all assembled. If that's flipped up, makes things a lot easier. Alright, I'll rush this along a little bit. Normally I would let this sit a little bit longer, but pop that out of the tool. And we'll go ahead and put this together. Alright, so we got our screws all laid out on the layout sheet here so that we can keep track of them. This screw is M1.4 if you've lost track. It's the smaller of the long screws. The other two are M2s, the fatter of the screws. And then on the Phantom 3 you have coarse thread and fine thread. All your coarse threads are the ones you take out of this cover. The rest are going to be fine threads. So as you put this together, you don't know if this is going to be bent here. If that's bent, that'll cause this to bind up as it goes together. If it's not bent bad, you can run your screws just a little bit loose and it'll work. I haven't had any problems with them coming out. You can't use Loctite with the plastic pieces. The Loctite breaks down the plastic, so avoid that. Just use the screws with the Loctite already on them and you'll be fine. Alright, so let's move on. I wouldn't really recommend trying to bend that too much. If it is bent and you try to bend it back, oftentimes it'll break, and that's a hard part to get. You don't want that to be plastic. You can't have everything be plastic because you'll lose too much rigidity. There's a guy on eBay selling 3D printed ones, but his parts are junk, so they're resin based. It's too brittle for this, so don't waste your money on those ones. If they could be done, I'd be making them. If they should be done, I'd be making them. There's other people selling aluminum ones. Buy those if you have to. Alright, so now we're gonna go ahead and do the yaw arm as well. There's the end stops there. Need to go with the end stop here. So that should work. And now we got these. These ones are the M2 shorter ones. So little fat screws. If you can call any screw in this thing fat, these would be it. And you just want to get them started until you have all three in. You don't want to tighten anything down. Makes it a little easier. That one didn't start. There we go. Alright, now we can go ahead and tighten these up. We want these to bite into the plastic a little bit. That helps keep them tight. Don't be afraid to crank them down a little bit. And don't get excessive, but you do want them to sink into the plastic a little bit. Alright, now sometimes this gap opens, sometimes it closes. I think I'm gonna start printing the gap a little bit bigger because I tightened it up, but I think I went a little bit too far. But I don't want this to bind up in here. I've been leaving as much material as possible, but I'll just remove just a little bit. Make a little bit of clearance there. Alright. Now it's free. But, like I said, you want as much material as you can. You can also file this little ridge here, but the majority of you won't have that problem because I'll change the design a little bit to give a little bit more room. And it's 1/2 millimeter counts for a lot in this game. So, alright. So now we'll move on to this board here. Make sure both these tabs are flipped up. You don't want that later, but you're not going to get this ribbon in if that's... There's lines on the cables. Some of them go all the way in, some of them don't. But when you put them together, you just want to make sure that they're straight. That's the only thing that they're consistent on, is that they're all straight when they're when they're put together. Right. Alright. Now, double check, look inside, make sure your tab's still flipped up. And make sure that this is still freed up. If this isn't freed up, you might want to loosen up your screws, and if it needs to, you can look there and see if it needs to move in a certain direction. Sometimes it doesn't line up quite right and you have to shove it around a little bit, but I'm going to give just a little bit more clearance on this. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and put this cover on, and really you just need this center one for the first part. I'm a little bit superstitious, and I kind of think that if you put it all together before you test it, you're just asking for trouble. So this helps ensure that it's problem free. You get it all assembled and it works. Alright. So you just want to make sure that you can hold it up and it drops. We're good there. If it binds, if it doesn't drop, then you gotta figure out where it's binding, whether it be on a Pro, your back cover could be bent, your motor could be misaligned just a little bit, or you could have too much material in there. Something needs to come out a little bit. Yeah. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and put this set screw in. I do this set screw, I'm going to go a little bit past. So it comes in. I don't know if that's focusing anything. Anyway, past and then come back out. You just want to cut your threads so you know when it's tight later. Alright, so that part's all done. Now we're going to start the ribbon cable. And when you take this back cover off, sometimes this board comes loose. You just want to push down, make sure it's good. And then we're going to start the ribbon cable with that first one. And by the way, guys, genuine DJI cable. There's nobody right now that makes a Phantom 3 standard cable that's worth anything. So the only suitable replacement is the genuine cable right now. And the Phantom 3 Pros, the only cables you should be using is genuine or ATK drones.com. They make a good cable. I do like their cables. I use them a lot. Their tape comes off in different ways, but the aftermarket cables, those $10 cables, you really get what you're paying for. You don't even, I mean, it's a waste of money. Don't do it. Alright, line this up inside the recess. You'll bend this cable flat here. That sticking up can catch stuff and cause you a problem, but don't crease it over too hard, I guess. I mean, you gotta find a balance, but alright. And then put this up. The screw was right under this ribbon cable, but it doesn't matter. It goes in from the other side just as easy. And it's a lot easier to do that than it is to put it together and then worry about it. Alright, so this, very important. This flat side of this shaft needs to go to the back of the gimbal. If that flat side is forward, it'll flop like a fish out of water. It's horrible. Then you gotta pull this off. Oh no, you're gonna ruin a ribbon cable. So make sure that flat is backwards. Okay, flat on the shaft matches the flat on the back of the camera, and you're good. Right. When you slide this on at first, check for clearance. This is a real sensitive spot there. It's hard to be consistent. I do my best, but any bend in this cover can cause it to bind there too. Don't be afraid to file just a little bit off. Make it a tight fit. If I made it looser, then we'd have problems with the camera going past the stop, and we don't want that. We can always fine tune it while we put it together. That's a little better. So this is this camera screw. If you lost track of it, it's the only one with a shoulder on the bolt. So it's got that little area by the head with no threads on it. That's the only one like that. So that's the camera bolt. Go ahead and put that in from the front. Alright, and the cable only wants to go the one way. Just carefully tuck it around. And then this is a little bit of a, these are a lot tighter to get in than they are on the Pros. And I like to fold that over. Makes it a lot easier. And put a little crease in your cable here too. Makes it a little easier. So where we want to line this ribbon up, if we line it up with this this outside edge, don't try to get it all the way back in there. You're not going to get it, and it's not going to be perfect if you do. So line it up with the outside edge there, and then just a little bit away from this here. This about as much as the gap is there. You want that gap in that back corner because you don't want your ribbon dragging on there. So, oops, wrong way. Alright, and don't use any tools for pushing your ribbon cable down. I see too many repairs come in where somebody put in a ribbon cable and had troubles with it, but they took their screwdriver and they poked it in the corner. Don't do that. Bad. Alright, so now we got these two lined up. We're good. We got that down in the corner. Like I said, these standards are really tight to get your fingers in there. If you got big fingers, you're really going to hate this part. Alright, hold that there and roll it out. Just try to line this up with the connector as you go up. Alright, there's a little line on the back side. That lines up with the top edge of the plastic. And we kind of curl this around. There we go. Now you guys can't complain and say I made that look too easy. Fumble around with it. Alright, razor blade, get in there and flip your tab down. Lock that connector. Okay. And now we're going to come this way. And I like to do something similar on this one too. Bring that down to there and fold it off. Alright, and then bring it around to the other side so you can pull it off later. Okay, so now there's if you're using an aftermarket arm like mine, there's going to be this little lip here. We're just lining up to that. If you're using the stock arm, let's see, I got one around here somewhere. You're going to be dropping it inside. It's pretty easy to line up. A little harder to poke down, but again, don't use any tools. We're going to go right on that lip, and then we want to line up against this back edge here. So set that down. Got it. Now, pull this out of there. Try not to let that stick on the back side until you got it in there. And when you do, try to line it up with that connector again. Alright. Tuck that one in too. And a razor blade isn't going to get in there to click that one in. I have a little drill bit on a stick. I have a same as the knife, but I put a little drill bit in there. That works great. Alright. Oop, I forgot this screw back here. I always forget this screw back here. So in my arm, I use one of the screws from the yaw and put back here instead of the, oh, I forgot the M2. Yeah. So in my yaw arm, I replace all the screws. So I use one of these back here for the roll arm. A little longer, got a better bite than the factory one. The factory one's pretty short. But if you are using the factory aluminum arm here, then the factory screw is the M2. The little guard here, that uses the M1.4s. Alright, but that's another one of those pieces that we don't put on until after we test it because of superstition and no other reason. Alright, looks like we're ready to, well, the back of the camera is one you can put on because that's just being safe. So, yeah, there we go. The pad on this one does not go on the connector, so make sure it's clear. On the standard and advanced, you want the pad to be on the connector to hold the thing in place, but they didn't do that, so I'm not going to do it. Alright. I think T1.5 or T6, sorry. On a Phantom 2, just interesting side note, if you don't put that cover on when you're putting the Phantom 2 gimbal together, the gimbal is not balanced enough and it throws an error for the pitch motor. It just sits there and does that. Too heavy in the front. So, alright. Now, I like to take this little bearing and put it on the end there, and if you pull the gimbal forward just till the shaft is flush with that, then that's the height that you want that bearing anyway. Sometimes it's a little bit off and you loosen it up and slide it down once the thing's all assembled, but this does not need to be very tight at all. Just snug it up with that D shape in this arm. The set screw does relatively little compared to the stock one. With the stock one, that set screw is there to keep the whole works lined up on the shaft. On mine, it's only there to just take up any little bit of slack. So you just want to tighten it up just enough to where you can feel it snug up. Alright, and our ribbon cable, make sure your tab's flipped up. And gold pads up. I had somebody send in a gimbal with the gold pads down. So got a little bit of a twist in there. That doesn't work. Alright, put that all together. And again, we're not going to pull that sticky off of there. Leave that on there till the end after we've tested it. Alright, now these are the shorter of the two sizes coarse thread. Those are the four corners. But to comply with the laws of superstition, again, we just put in the bare necessity. Alright, this gimbal's ready to test. In the end, we'll put this back on. We got the M1.4s for those. This cover is the shorter of the two coarse threads, and then the longer of the two coarse threads hold these covers over the antennas. And you should be set. Alright, thanks for watching.